Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Art of Poetry. I'm Lauren Smith, one of the program coordinators at Sage Collective, where we're rewriting the narrative on aging. Living vibrantly is part of our mission, and while we talk a lot about healthy lifestyles, we also encourage older adults to find and pursue their passions and to wake up every day with a sense of purpose. Tonight, we will have a first time Sage guest instructor joining us to teach us of crafting authentic, compelling spoken word poetry. Jazziyah Higgins, otherwise known as Blue. Blue is an artist and author from Cincinnati, Ohio, and is currently based in Los Angeles, California. Blue self-published his first poetry collection, Orchids and Blues, in 2022. The same year, he graduated from Howard University, HU, and sent off his fellow graduates with especially crafted words of encouragement. I was lucky enough to have caught some of his work in person. So here is a snippet from a past performance for a taste of his work before we get started.
The universe owes all poets reparations with tax, tip, and interest. Personally, I could use a new love interest for every love poem I wrote for folks in hopes that wifey would find me in the crowds I spoke over. I need a Krispy Kreme coffee with caramel drizzled donuts for every time her sweet ass nothings kept me up in the chest of the night looking for treasures and new discovery amidst these lines. Better yet,
Zaya, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited to have you. How are you?
I'm great. Sun's out. That's what LA does to you. But it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm glad that I'm doing it with you guys, if anybody.
Yay! Well, would you mind talking a little bit about what we should expect from class today?
Yes. So one thing that you guys will learn about me is I'm a very interactive teacher, right? And I really love to make sure that anything that I'm doing is less lecture style and more feeling like you really came and talked to a friend that is maybe just educated on a specific topic that you're interested in. So we're gonna get into the three core things when it comes into like writing overall, but like the writing aspect will be the heaviest part of the course. And how do we even approach our journals? How do we even approach the act of writing? Then we'll move into revision, which is super important. But again, not as important as I think just the overall approach to how you write or why you're writing. Those things, those questions are like very important to answer. And then lastly, which is super exciting, mostly the fun part of the course, which is just talking about performing. Something that I think I've found a skill in when I was super young, thanks to my theater teacher. And we'll talk much more about that. But yeah, writing, revising, and performing. But most of all, I'm here to just help teach, learn, and just be in community with you guys. So I'm glad to do it.
Amazing. For all of our audience members, if you don't have your pen and paper, grab it now, or anything that you can use to write with. I'm ready. I'm so ready to go. So you know what? I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to give the class over to you. The class is all yours.
Thanks, Lauren. Absolutely. Okay, class. Wow, look at us. We're here. I'm super excited to get into everything. There's going to be a lot of information, but I feel like the information is going to be pretty succinct. It's going to be clear because that's my number one priority is clarity. Shout out to my therapist. But yeah, I want to make sure that you guys are engaged. So if there's anything that you need to ask or question you may have, I can walk and chew gum. So feel free to put anything in the comments. And let's get it going. So I'm going to start off by just sharing my screen here and share the presentation that I'll have for us today. Cool. Got to stay on brand. So this is what I call Blues Room, just to stay on point. It's our writing, revision, and performance course. Before we dive into the actual content, just want to be transparent and tell you a little bit about me and why am I, of all people, teaching this course. So again, my name is Jazziyah Higgins. I also go by Blue, which, you know, if you ever want to know why, there's a lot of stories that go with it. So just feel free to ask me. But I'm a self-taught writer, poet, and spoken word artist. I always add this self-taught because nobody traditionally taught me how to write poetry. I wasn't inspired by, you know, just like a random English class or anything like that. I used to actually draw too, but writing was the thing that kind of like, it's like a movie moment. Like one day my mom just walked in my room. Transparently, she like saw one of these love letters that I wrote to like a girl back in like elementary school. But she didn't reprimand me, which is very important. She came in and she was like, I seen one of the letters, and I think you may be interested in this thing called poetry. And so she handed me this book. It's called Voices from the Soul. It's like a compilation of different poems, like literally like hundreds and hundreds of different poems per page, or not per page, like in the book overall. And then I was like, okay, wow. And then I just started like highlighting things, circling things. It was like I got struck by lightning or something, and that's how poetry came into my life. But over time, I taught myself how to write by reading and writing more and just figuring out what touched me and what was like impactful for me to like read overall. So self-taught writer, poet, and spoken word artist. Spoken word specifically, I separate these things because being a writer and being a poet and being a spoken word artist, in my opinion, is three different art forms. Writing, that means I can write anything. So whether it's copy for like a marketing post, or whether that's like a script, like short stories, I used to write those a lot. So that's one thing. Poetry is another thing, and then spoken word, which we're going to get into a lot today. Just the act of performing, right, and the act of sharing your work in a way that touches audiences and kind of creates community through what you had to share. So shout out to my theater teacher. Her name is Miss Castell. She was the one that pushed me to get on stage and share my stuff. She was like, "You're gonna be president one day, so you need to learn how to speak," and yada yada yada. She's great. So that's what inspired me to start sharing it out loud, and that was in high school. I want to say sophomore year. But moving past that, when I got deep into actually wanting to take it serious, and I considered it a passion of mine, I did go to Howard University. So HU, you know, I was in the School of Business, ironically, and I was a marketing major. A lot of people would think I was an English major in fine arts, right? But no, I actually was in marketing, the School of Business. So shout out SOB Money Gang. But I think it's pivotal. I know how to market myself because of SOB, but writing is still my passion overall. I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio, grew up in Smithfield, Virginia, specifically, before I made my way to Howard. But now, most importantly, the current moment, I volunteer and host at a place called The Poetry Lounge. 26 years or 27 years now. We just celebrated. It's a beautiful, immaculate place, one of the largest, if not the largest, consistent weekly open mic in America, to my knowledge. But definitely, if you're ever on the West Coast in LA, you got to come check us out. I have the pleasure of being a co-host. Just under 2 years in LA, and I had the pleasure of just being welcomed by that community as an artist, as a just person in the audience, but now as a host on the actual team. So it's been a pleasure. And then I also host monthly open mics at Radical Hood Library. So that is a book club is what it started as, but now it's a lending library for Black and Brown people. Primarily Black people in terms of like sharing voices and whatnot, but they do a lot of amazing work, started by the artist named No Name. And she had an idea to start a book club and then created this whole, like, now it's a global, like, chapters. There's different clubs in lending libraries across America, and not outside of America, across the world, I should say. So yeah, I have the pleasure of hosting the open mics there. And I've also had paid opportunities with True Religion, NAACP, CMCF. So I wanted to kind of just give you guys this like foundation so that you would know I'm not just randomly some guy off the street they just picked up to talk about poetry. I do have a little bit of experience, even though I'm very early in my career. I've had the blessing of it being experienced in a plethora of ways throughout poetry. So moving on, just some visual stuff for my visual learners out there. This is my Instagram. This is where I usually post most of my things, whether it's me performing, whether it's something about my life, something I want to write about. I treat my IG like a live portfolio. So this Jazziyah is my name, just one extra H because Instagram. There's also a picture on the bottom left right here. You can see that's me performing at Howard University SOB graduation. So not commencement, but SOB graduation. Really lovely poem. It's on my page as well. Kind of went viral, so that's my shoulders off a little bit. Next to that is the talent show that I did. It was in Crampton Auditorium. I actually came out the first place winner, but more importantly than winning, I had the opportunity to share my work with a lot of the student body, which I didn't get a lot of opportunity to do that outside of just random open mics around DC or on campus. So it was a beautiful moment. And then my pride and joy right here, Orchids and Blues. This was the first book I ever published back in May of 2022. And I was 20 years old when I did it, coming straight out of the pandemic. Kind of shook me up like it did all of us, right? And I said I wanted to do something that left like a legacy, because God forbid if something had happened to me, all my stuff would just be in my journal or in my notes, which no problem with that. But I wanted something that I felt like I could like put together project wise and share with the world. So that is all about me. In the background, the foundation I feel like is important. But now to you, the listener, most importantly, the first thing I want us to do is a short exercise. I'm not going to give you any context because there's going to be a lot of surprises during this course. So if you have your pen, pencil, paper, or maybe on your laptop, maybe on your phone, whatever way you have to write, I just want you to get that out. I'm going to set a very short 5-minute timer. And what I want you to do is I want you to just write. No instruction, no, prompts. I just want you to literally write the first thing that comes in your mind. So if that's, I cooked scrambled eggs this morning and it was a little too cheesy, or whether that was, I've been thinking about a lot about grief and lament and the state of the world economy, like whatever the case is, I just want you to write. So I'm gonna set my short timer here and I'm gonna write with you because anything I ask you to do, I'll make sure that I'm also doing, just in the state or in the spirit of community. And when the 5 minutes is up, I'll let you know. So I just started it. Okay. It's like the music stopped on cue. I could have like clapped or something. Cool. That is 5 minutes and now 12 seconds. So if you have a lasting thought or whatever you're writing, just go ahead and wrap it up. Here's my little proof. Again, I wasn't cheating. I did write with you guys. And yeah, now that we've done that, I'll move to this next slide. So you may be wondering, why did he have us write and give us no prompt, no instruction? He didn't even teach us anything yet. That is exactly what my intention was. So whether in the chat or whether to yourself, I just want you to reflect. Like, how did it feel? Like, how did it feel to write with pretty much no instruction, no direction, and just like pure free writing? Like, not being graded. I can't collect. We're not in person. I'm not going to ask you to read it. I just want you to reflect on, like, how did it feel? Did it feel freeing? Did you feel restricted? Did you feel like it's kind of hard to write, if I don't have something I feel like I need to be achieving while I'm writing? Did you think I was going to ask you to put, what you're reading in the chat? These are all like questions I feel like are super important before I get to any type of true instruction. And the reason why is because I think I came across this one day, or maybe I made it up. Sometimes I do not remember, but let's just say I came across it just for the sake of credit, right? So there's 3 writers in this world, in my opinion. There's one who write for themselves, the one who writes for others, and the one who doesn't write at all. So when you're approaching the act of writing as really a spiritual practice, reflect on what type of writer you want to be. And some people, it's like none of these are wrong, by the way. It just depends on what you want to be. Like my own mother, like she writes all the time, but she does not share her writing. Even with me, I didn't even know she was a writer like avidly until later in my like high school years. Mind you, I had already been doing all this writing, so it was just hilarious to know that later. But then you got people that write for others all the time. They love to perform. They love to go in communities. Love to go and share whatever they have a perspective on. I mean, then you have people that write for themselves as well. And then people that just don't, write at all. And I wouldn't want that to be anybody. I would want everybody to find themselves in the pocket of either writing for themselves really is the best. But others is also cool if you have a community, like focus on what you do and why you do it. But again, that paper, like even with mine, keep it. I would challenge you not to share with anybody. I would challenge you not to judge it, fold it up, put it in a wallet, throw it away if you're trying to practice like detachment with your work, for my like avid artists out there. But for my beginners or people that maybe don't write at all, I wanted to just give you a practice that I do every morning, which we're going to talk a little bit about this later too, which is just writing with no direction and seeing what comes to mind. And then keeping it for yourself, because some things are okay to just stay with you. Everything doesn't need an audience. And that's the first thing I wanted to teach you today when it comes to writing. So now that you've done that, you may be asking, how do I specifically, me and you being you, how do I make a poem? I see somebody just said what I wrote felt very authentic and from the heart. That's super dope, because that's exactly what the intention is. When we're not focused on having like other people in the writing room with us, we're not focused on judgment. Therefore, we're not focused on saying what sounds politically correct. We're not focused on it being good or anything that is distracting us from the real intention, which is to just write. So I'm so glad that felt that way to you. I'm glad that intention came off. So I get this question a lot, especially as like a poet, and I often was the only poet in my communities, especially back in Virginia. Like, wasn't really a popular thing to be doing, unfortunately. But I used to get asked a lot, like, how do I make a poem or how do I write a poem? And I have one answer to that. I believe that poems or any form of writing, creative expression, because I do want to broaden this up, but I'm biased. I'm focusing on poetry. I believe they already are in us, right? So they're waiting to be written. There's no real creative act in like, I'm going to take this and make a poem. I think that while maybe successful, isn't always the healthiest frame of mind. Like I have this saying where I say just because it's successful doesn't mean it's healthy. So if you always think that you have to do something like go out of side of yourself and create a poem or a story or whatever the case is, you may find yourself in a lot of like facing a lot more resistance in trying to do that. If you reframe your thinking to say that, my stories, my experiences, my observations live within me already, they're just waiting to be shaped by me, and I need to just give it space to like exist naturally. I think you'll find a lot more seamless process with the act of creation, right? So I'll think about things like I once had somebody told me that everything in life is not about like the writing or the poetry. Like you got to do some living because what we're creating is off of what we live or what we experience. So go out and get those experiences, and then when you do it, exercise like 5-minute word vomit is what I call it, but the first thing we just did, you'll be surprised to what your mind is already thinking. And then when you're putting it on paper, you're like, oh, this is how I feel about yesterday. This is how I feel about right now, or that thing that happened 2 weeks ago, or even like super pivotal events like the birth of a child or a graduation or whatever the case is. These things already live inside you, but you got to give them space to kind of exist, instead of thinking that it's like a step 1, step 2 analytical practice with how you're creating. So I would inspire and I would encourage you all to reframe your mind on how are you making a poem. Instead of thinking like that can be kind of stressful. Think, how am I going to give space to the things that already live inside me, the things that I've experienced? Cool. Approaching the journal. So we're going to stick here a little bit. One thing I wanted to talk a lot about is how we approach our journals or how we approach what we're writing. So I'm going to kind of pull from this book. Happy to share these books as well. This is called, make sure it's in camera. This is called Method Writing. It's by Jack Grapes. Super excellent. Oh, yeah, perfect. Jack Grapes, Method Writing. I've learned a lot, and I haven't even touched maybe 20% of this book. But the whole philosophy around his idea of method writing or approaching writing is how an actor approaches acting. So I'm going to kind of pull a little bit from this book. I already have it like written down. So when I say these things, if there's anything that sticks out to you or anything that you have a question about or clarification, again, put it in the chat or just reflect on it for those that are watching like a playback. But he says this thing in the book. He says that you're working out, you're building muscle and finding a habit of writing, not a habit of producing. So how I interpret that is, said differently, you're writing with the intention of becoming someone who writes, not becoming a good writer, because at the stage of like entry, that shouldn't interest us. So going away from the text, the way I want all of us to think about writing, and especially those that have been writing for a while, maybe were coached or taught up on it, is the way that you should approach writing is that you shouldn't say, all right, how can I make this good? Or how can I make this fire, as I like to say? You should say, how can I just become someone who writes? Right. So I know there's a lot of you out there that haven't wrote in a while, or maybe wrote ever. And I don't want you to have this, which a lot of artists go through, a lot of poets go through, this unhealthy relationship with their art because they've made it so methodical. Instead, if you're approaching it like, okay, cool, if I want to be somebody who writes, then I need to find opportunities to write. So I like to write in the morning. Toni Morrison also likes to write in the morning. There's people that are like night owls, so they like to stay up 2 a.m., 3 a.m. They like to write then. That's when they get the most silence. Maybe your kids are asleep or whatever the case is. But becoming someone who writes, if you do that, like if you focus on, my therapist doesn't like goals, but if you focus on a point and aim for something like that's vague enough to like for you to exist in the realm and not feel like you failed if you're not doing something exact, you'll automatically become more optimal. An example that she would have gave me is if I was trying to walk from California to New York, if I looked up and kept looking for like, the Statue of Liberty, trying to make my way to New York, it'll be very easy to be discouraged because it's like, I have so far to go. But I rather take the walker that is looking down at their 2 feet because they're just focused on one step. So when we're focused on like being present in the moment in that way, we're automatically optimal. I take that theology and place it to writing, because if I'm focused on becoming a writer and not a good writer, then automatically I'll become whatever we call a good writer, because I'm just so focused on the act of writing, the act of reading, the act of digesting material, finding my voice in that way. So that's the first point I wanted to focus on from how you approach the journal. Another point, and I hope you maybe still have your piece of paper that you wrote with, is Jack talks about writing like you talk, not how you think you should. And this is how you get closer to finding your actual voice. learn the truth of your voice, not showy effects in writing. So we're gonna talk about like cliches and my personal examples of writing that I don't think is compelling and stuff like that in the next slide. But write like you talk is a very important point I wanted to focus on, because I think sometimes, especially those like within like the Black community, I think sometimes we, based on our experiences in life, we think that we have to go seek out other voices or seek out other ways because that's what gets validated and that's what gets awarded, that's what gets uplifted, etc. And I don't even want to silo it to just that. That's just my experience, but I'm sure many of us have went through experiences where we thought we weren't worthy enough, or we thought our voices, our stories weren't good enough to be heard or put on a platform. I'm here to tell you that's absolutely false, right? Because the only person that has your story in the entire world is you. So it's automatically unique. It's automatically different, automatically stands out. How you give breath to it is up to you. And there's no wrong way to do it. So how do I apply that to my writing, or our writing, I should say, is writing like how I actually talk. When I used to try to write like the people we're taught about in school, or if you tried to like emulate a Shakespeare or emulate, whoever your favorite, I don't know why, like Jasmine Sullivan came to mind, or Tony Braxton, or just favorite singers, or if you try to emulate somebody else too much, you will find yourself not feeling like any of your work is authentic or that it connects with you. You know why? Because it's not you, it's an emulation. And emulation is cool when you're learning the art, right? But at some point you got to give breath to your own voice. And so when you're writing, I don't want you to try to go listen to my videos or somebody else's and say, how would they say this? I want to know how you would say it. So if you, let's say we were talking about waking up in the morning and cooking. If you would say, yeah, I'm about to get out of bed, you know what I'm saying? Wake up, cook. If you talk like that, that's how I want you to write. If you talk more proper, or you talk more from Mississippi, if you, however you actually talk is the way I want you to write, because now we don't have to worry about trying to get like through another layer of authenticity because you're already not operating in a state of mind that is you. So write like you talk, not how you think you should. Don't try to be showy. Don't use words that you don't actually use. Like the reason why we even see in academia some people using like what we call big words or other like languages, because they read like that. And when they read like that, then of course you're resource for that material. But I'm much more interested in the person that is talking, writing, acting like themselves, because that is how I'm getting an authentic, unique experience, not the 50 other people that are trying to sound like a super popular mainstream artist. So that's a huge point for me. If you couldn't tell, like writing like you talk, I think that's essentially like one of the reasons why I became prominent in some of the areas I was in, because I've literally had people walk up to me and say, hey, I didn't know poetry could sound like that. And I was like, yeah, like I know you probably thought I was going to come up here and fine like wine and talk in this cadence and da 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 da, like, and that's cool. Like some people are on that part of their journey where they're learning the art. So I don't even say that in a condescending way. I just say it in a way like the more educated I became is like the real secret is going to find you, not finding something out there. It's not external. So yeah, when I talk like how I do in my day-to-day and I put that in my work, people are captivated because they're like, oh, it feels like a conversation. I was like, that's exactly my intention. I don't like lecture style or abstract type of speech. That's not how I function. So I wouldn't put that in my work. I hope that connected with y'all, because that's definitely a big part of my journey in learning that. A couple more points, then we're gonna get to like some examples. But another thing I wanted to add about just the approaching the journal, again, still going from Method Writing by Jack Grapes, literally just write. So that's what we just did in the beginning of this class, in this course, is because there's a book called Artist's Way. It's by Julia Cameron. I'm going to reference probably a couple books in this conversation, but there's a practice in there called the morning pages, right? And the whole philosophy is that in the morning, you just get up and you write 3 pages of anything. And you do that so that it clears room, right? Kind of like think about how white noise and brown noise works on our brains. It's kind of the same way for a writer, where it's like you're kind of clearing out all of this space of whatever you thought about in your dreams, whatever happened last night, etc. And then you also simultaneously practice the act of writing. So then now when you get to like wanting to capture a moment or an idea for a poem, you have so many hours in just writing anything, not trying to make it good, that now you getting from a blank page to a full page, like how we just did, it's almost like second nature. So I want you guys to just practice writing, like no rhyme or reason, no need for it to be good, no need for you to share it, just practice the act of writing. And the last thing last couple of things I want to touch on, emotion, right? So Well, I think I want to come back to that point. So I'll say this is a point that I have from reading this book too. Is I think the most poetic thing there is the truth, right? You look at anything that I feel like you may have found poetic, or you may have felt like connected with you. It's probably because you sense some truth in it, whether it's truth to what that person was saying, whether it's truth in your own story, like, oh, that happened in my life. I think the truth is the most poetic thing that there is. So find out your truth, find out the truth in your writing by acting and being as you naturally are, and writing what you know to be true instead of writing what you think somebody else is going to agree with, because it sound good, the claps, the praise and all that stuff, especially in like a sharing space, it sounds great, but that fulfillment will not hit you unless you're writing something that you know to be true or closest to the truth that you know. So that would be my advice in like approaching the journal. Yeah, so the last thing I'll say about approaching the journal is excuse me, is that it doesn't have to be good any more than breathing needs to be good. You just need to breathe, i.e., you just need to write. That came from the book as well. So don't try to approach the journal writing something good. You don't try to breathe good, right? So just write, and I think you'll find the results that you're looking for automatically. There's a saying in the golf world, it's like you don't try to hit the ball on the green, you swing the club correctly. Like process is the product. Don't look for a product. The process is the product. I'm going to move on to some examples of what I would say. And I don't really say words like this, but bad writing. And when I say bad, I don't mean like, because who am I? Judging art is already a weird thing, but I'm going to say that this is writing that I think will not help you achieve the results that you're looking for. So not desirable. When I say bad, that's what I mean.
Wait, I have a question. Can I jump in with a question?
For sure.
Would you mind if before we got to the bad work, we showed one more example of your fantastic work? I think this would be a really good moment for the audience to take a second. Now that we've written out our journals and had our like very vulnerable thoughts that have to be seen by anyone, we can share the thoughts that you've had that you are willing to share with the public. Let's do that.
Absolutely.
This is a public service announcement. Do not date a poet. And let this be your first and final warning. Poets do not come included with free trials, take backsies, or 30-day warranties. In reality, poets should come with instructions. Poets should come with prenups, because the way they will take your words and immortalize them and rhyme laid back with their feet up, bro, poets should come with a big sign that reads, danger lies ahead. And an asterisk that says, especially in bed, because if they can talk good, they can fuck good. Poets use their favorite tool to make a swimming pool out of you. All that slick talk on the page, now they breaking your back on some silk sheets and a memory foam mattress. I mean, imagine every argument being turned to art. Poets using their heart as an AR and heavy artillery, leaving you on red but getting applauded for their delivery.
Spitting.
Yeah, I don't know if that's what mine is going to sound like today, but I might get there. Like maybe.
You definitely will.
Okay. I'm ready to take some of my journal work and hear what not to do, and then you'll show us what I should be doing. Yes?
Perfect.
Okay.
That's exactly what we'll do. Okay, cool. So that was actually perfectly timed. So let's talk about what I think is bad writing first, and then we'll go to good to keep it balanced. I'm a Libra. So what I would consider bad writing is lies, right? That's the first thing. I just talked about how I think the truth is the most poetic thing. I think lies in the writing it's not helpful because it doesn't really achieve what you think it does. And I also just want you to feel empowered that you don't have to lie in your work. You can tell the truth about your story and who you are, and that will be honored, right? And if not by anybody else, it'll be honored by you. And that's the most important part of this whole process. Another version of bad writing, I think, is cliches. So some examples: fine like wine. How many times have y'all heard that? Roses is red, violets is blue. And people have put spins on it, right? That's different. That's like a stylistic way to like approach the writing. But using those things in your writing, you don't need to come up with something like fresh or something that is unique to like your experience. Words like crimson, iridescent, ethereal. These are all words that I feel like a lot of people use because they think this is the type of writing that spruces up what I'm like putting on paper. But honestly, it comes off more so like, okay, that's a cliche. And now I'm kind of dissociated from what you're talking about because I know that this isn't you talking, and I prioritize hearing your voice and your work. I put ChatGPT here, right? So this isn't a commentary on AI as a whole, right? Because I think that's a whole other thing or a whole other topic. My experience with writing, though, I've even given like ChatGPT like a whole example of like, right, like this poet read this, like use this as a source of information. It doesn't write good poetry. You know why? Because the thing that's missing with it is human experience and human perspective. You can only teach something so much, but only we are living, right? So I feel like that was even a poetic example of just you have things that you should tell, and you're the only person that can do that, right? You couldn't even tell ChatGPT to do it, even if you gave it all the information it needed. There's something specific about a human voice and human perspective and experience that relates differently when it comes to writing. Last two examples is Heard It All Before. I know y'all heard that song, Heard It All Before. I can't really sing right now, but I know you heard that song. Basically, what I mean by that is stories that we've heard other poets tell. I don't want to hear, another person's poem in coming out of you. I want to hear your perspective on this topic. So if you write about love, you're going to write about struggle. If you're going to write about war, if you're going to write about relationships, whatever the case is, I don't want to hear somebody else's story or somebody else's poem. I want to hear your poem, your story. And then lastly, it doesn't pass the so what test. So this is more so for when you're performing, which I'm about to get to. But if it doesn't pass the so what test, meaning like you did a whole piece, and then if I say so what, that means like what message were you trying to get across, or what story were you trying to tell? Not even saying that I have to agree or has to be important, but we can tell if you wrote something just because you wanted to write it, instead of like, this is why what I'm saying matters to me. And I think that's a very important thing. So when you write something and you want to share it, or you're getting into the like revision aspects of it, like if somebody else were to walk up to it, or even you read it, if you feel like you read all that and you're like, so what, then that's something that you should pay attention to. Moving over to good writing. So I wanted to mention this. I think good writing is true. I think good writing is memorable, right? If it sticks with you in memory, and if it like has an impact on you past the moment in which you digested it. I think it's storytelling, not selling. So I call even in the little description box, you can see I say storyteller, because I think my intention with writing is to tell a story, not trying to sell you. So even in that, I didn't talk a lot about the things that were shown today, but in the work that I just showed, or that Lauren just showed, the Do Not Date a Poet poem, I'm telling you a story about my experiences that I've heard about people dating poets. I'm not trying to sell you an idea and convince you to believe me. I'm just telling my story, and whatever your reaction to that is, great. But that's not really my intention of sharing it. I just want to tell a story. So I think that's great writing, right? Not something that's trying to convince you to have a certain opinion, but if it can provoke a thought or provoke some type of like, oh, like I used to think like this one, maybe. Now I got a perspective on here. That's good writing. Good writing makes you want to write. I've heard so many poets. And I think the best poems are the ones that make me say, I got to get in the lab. I got to write my version of that story, etc. And the last one, you may be looking at it like, what does he mean? Fresh language. I put PB and marshmallow. I watched this one video shortly. I watched this one video and it was like, we don't want PB and J writing, right? Everybody can make a PB and J. But what about like peanut butter and marshmallow? And the whole point is like, I used to eat these sandwiches, right? So I used to eat peanut butter and marshmallow sandwiches. Great, by the way. But also now that I'm an adult, maybe not, because I ate it as a kid. But the whole point is that how do you frame a story to make it fresh and new and intriguing, and maybe not even like great like peanut butter and marshmallow, but the whole point is, can you give us something fresh out of something that we all are still familiar with, at least the structure wise. So fresh language, when I think fresh language, I think peanut butter and marshmallow is my example. Cool. Hopefully those make sense. We'll move over to myths, and then I'm going to talk about performance, because I do want to make sure I get to that as a part of this course. So myths, I think these are big myths out of writing, in my opinion. Writer's block. I'm a big advocate. I think writer's block is a myth, y'all. I think that writer's block, there's another book. See, I told y'all. I think I have it, yep, right here. It's this book. It's called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. One of the best books I've ever read in my life. I'm not gassing, and this is not an ad. But that book taught me a lot about what resistance is. If you're dealing with resistance in your creativity and life and how you're trying to approach things, I would say read it. But in that book, it talks a lot about how like writer's block is really just other things, and we call it writer's block. So it could be fear, like fear of telling a story because you don't know how people are going to perceive it, fear of really going into a certain emotion and embodying it because you know I haven't really held onto it or focused on this thing that happened to me or this experience I had a lot. Or just like being afraid to try stuff and that it's not good in your eyes. Like I think writer's block, the name has made writers feel comfortable with calling in that and not addressing it. But I think like creatively, like there's really more going on that has a lot more to do with life than it ever has to do with like a pen and paper. I think another myth about writing is there's a secret to being a good writer. There's no secret. Trust me, I went to plenty panels, plenty YouTube videos, plenty courses like this. And I want more writers to tell everybody that there is no secret, right? To being a good writer or awarded or whatever the case is. Any writer that I think anybody would admire can tell you they've been rejected 100 times more than they've been accepted to any type of opportunity, right? But I also would tell you that I think they would say if they're really deep in their journey, that's not even the most important thing. Those are cool things. The most important thing is how you explore and play with yourself, like in language and understanding who you are. That's the real like golden fleece of it all. So like the good writers that we see are the writers I think are that are leaning more towards the truth, that are leaning more towards like what they care about and like having an authentic voice about themselves. And then last two myths: writing cannot get you paid, sustain a life, or be fruitful. So not true. I told you that I had paid opportunities before. I told you that I've been taken to different platforms. I wouldn't be here talking to you right now if I didn't trust that writing is something I cared about and that I feel like it could take me to where I want to go. I'm very spiritually connected to writing, and even with like my journey with God, and then just overall, like writing can do a lot of things, but it's about your belief in self and your belief in what you care about. So a lot of what I'm talking about is writing today, but trust me, these messages go beyond writing and to whatever you feel like touches you on a passionate level. And then lastly, this was big for me, especially this past year. I only write poetry. I don't rap. I can't write music. I can only do one thing. I think a lot of writers and creatives pigeonhole themselves into just doing one thing. Recently, I started like making music on the side as like a fun hobby, honestly. And I've made like maybe like 15, 20 songs at this point, like even song writing for other artists. And it's opened up how much I can do in my like my professional field of being a poet, because I learned how it felt to be a child again and just play around and like just do something I don't know what I'm doing in music, right? And because I had that like playful experience, I was like, okay, anytime I get too serious with this thing that I love over here in poetry, let me remind myself of how I felt in this other thing where I knew nothing and I was just exploring. So don't pigeonhole yourself to one thing. Usually fear, like the obstacle is the way, usually. Whatever you're afraid of doing or telling yourself that you can't do, those things, like they withhold the magic that you're looking for in the other thing that you're doing. So be open as possible. Okay. That was a lot about writing. I told you it's gonna be writing heavy. I'm gonna only have one slide for revision because revision honestly needs to be its own course in itself. But here's a couple of things I'm gonna touch on just the active revising. So you can't write and revise at the same time. Tyler the Creator just did this interview called "Ask Me Anyway" by Instagram. Just for those that want to look at it, he said, "Create like a child, edit like a scientist." That is the whole point. I just told you about me and like my journey with music now and then writing. The whole idea of what I want you guys to do and why I just went through myths and bad and good and how you approach the journal with writing is because I want you to just be focused on being authentically yourself and let that inner child come up and play when you write, right? So I want you to just do that. And then when that writing process is over, like when you've captured the feeling, then you move over to that academic brain that you have and knowing what makes a great sentence or what makes like a accurate depiction of this moment that you had. That's editing like a scientist. That's when you turn on the other side of your brain and you're like, okay, now that the feeling has passed and I've word vomited everything I can think about, how do I edit this to make it tighter? How do I edit this to make it more succinct, more like accurate depictions and cut out the fat and the filler? I know my people that cook out there, I know y'all know what I mean. You know what I'm saying? Like when you're cooking and you're seasoning something and you're working on something, like how do you get it from like all of these materials to like the meal that I'm now serving you to eat, right? That's when you summon your second genius when you're revising. Your first genius is when you're just a kid playing and you don't care about rules and restrictions and you're just doing. The second genius is when you come in and say, okay, yeah, we can cut this out, or okay, I like how this goes together, or maybe the end should go in the beginning. And that's when you like turn on that academic, but you can't do that at the same time. So first, just write, just play, then come back in and use what you've been taught or what you have learned over time. Questions you can ask yourself, and then the rest of this course will be about performing. How can a title be more striking, informative, or inviting? The poem you heard today, the second one was called Do Not Date a Poet. I'm sure anybody that hears that is going to want to know why. I think the first piece you heard today was called Reparations. You don't know where I'm really going with it until you learn I'm talking about poets. I have another poem called My God. I have a poem called Nurture versus Nature. Like, I'm very big on titles because I want it to be informative enough to know, maybe I know what he's talking about, striking, and then most importantly, invites you in. It's just like, I don't care what nobody says. We all judge books by its cover. We judge poems, things by their titles. So if you're not invited, why would you come into the room, right? Another question I want you to ask yourself is, how can an opening line be more arresting? And I wanted to use arresting specifically because it's like, and only in this context, it's grabbing you. It's like without permission, honestly. The first line in Do Not Date a Poet is, this is a public service announcement. Do not date a poet. Okay, bet. I'm sad. What's up? I'm listening. You know what I'm saying? Another poem I have called My God. Ain't God a comedian who don't listen to hecklers? Like, okay, bet. Where are we going? So that opening line, ask yourself, is it intriguing? Is it arresting? Is it irresistible? Like, my goal when I'm starting a piece is that I want the person that's in the back corner texting they boo about how they ready to come home to look up from their phone and listen to what I'm saying. Even if you do it for the first two lines, I won. Like, that was my intention, right? So think about how those opening lines can do that. And then as you're writing the poem, does each line support the next? So there's things I came up with that are cool, but instead of thinking like, oh, look how cool this is, I had to reframe my mind. Shout out Edwin Bonnie, one of my dear friends out here in LA. They told me to go from the frame of mind of, oh, look what I can do with words and how cool this is, to look what I can do with the truth. That is the reframe that you need when it comes to writing. So when you're writing, I've come up with a lot of bars and punchlines, but does each line really support the next to get us through the entire story? And the last question I want you to ask yourself is, am I being greedy? Sometimes we want to write about our first love or our moms or our fathers or people in our family, and we think we only get this one poem to do it all justice. No, don't be greedy. It's okay to just focus on one moment. It's okay to just focus on one emotion. Like, you don't have to be greedy with the stories that you're trying to tell. That's I try to package it as much as possible for revision. Now we're going to talk about performing. So there's really a lot to performing, but I just want you guys to focus on these 3 I's. So we're going to start right here first with infect. I talked a little bit about it already, but make your audience listen. So their heads should lift, gain access quickly, and you should give them a reason to care. If I'm not saying something that sounds striking, like the My God piece or the Do Not Date a Poet, I may start the poem with something that gets access to the body. When I say access to the body, usually I want that line to be like a, like, whoa, what is he about to talk about? Or humor, like laughter. You're accessing the body, and now that person's naturally comfortably like in tune with you. You like put yourself on the same frequency. So I love using humor because you're laughing. I love using like something that will make you like verbally say, like be in tune with me. I want to make us be on the same frequency. So I call that the infect. Inspire. So this is how I keep you around, give you something to binge, something to invest in, to enjoy, and keep you like invested via engagement throughout it. So there's definitely lines, like some people do call and response. Some people do like pop culture lines. Some people like have something within their piece that guarantees you to still be here with me. And there's like a whole other like course I could do on body language, but just in terms of the content, if you ever watch any of my pieces, for sure there's something, not even on purpose, but there's something in the middle there that is like, I like what he did there, and boom, you're still invested. I'm keeping your attention for 3, 4, sometimes 5 minutes in a world that everything is 10 seconds. That's called inspiring you to be engaged. But I have to do that. It's my job as a performer to do that. And then lastly, inform. So I mean this in a couple ways. So right here it says, tell the audience a little bit about yourself. where to find you, how to keep up to date. That's more so for those that, want to like career make this a career basically, and you want to keep people informed around and about you. But I really mean more like as well, like informing your audience of what was the purpose of you listening to me. Like, what was the purpose of this entire story, and why did I want you to like really be in tune here? So yeah, that is everything that I have in terms of this course. In terms of like, again, writing, revision, and performing. If there's any questions, I mean, of course, in the chat, but also if you have anything, I've given my IG. I'm very accessible. I'm not bougie like that. And this is a lot to pack into 50 minutes. But I hope that you gain something from it. I hope that you learn from it. I always have a lot of fun just teaching in general. So please just let me know. And yeah, I guess I'll invite Lauren back up here.
Yay! Thank you so much. I definitely learned a lot. We had my friend Asha Gaines Smith, who is a visual artist, on here before, and she knows I get very nervous when it's time to share the work. So I won't be doing mine today, but I might share it with you first, and then you're gonna give me some notes, and I'm gonna make a beautiful little spoken word poem, but only for this group of people. I don't think I'm gonna go farther.
Whatever you want to do, it's up to you.
But I know that you still perform and you still write poetry. You might come out with another book, and when you do, we'll definitely be here waiting for it. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate everything that you shared with us. And yes, please drop your Instagram in the chat. We'll share it again with our audience. And thank you so much for your time this evening. We hope to have you back.
Of course, you definitely will. Thank you to Sage Collective. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, all of you, for listening. Even on playback or live, it's a pleasure. I'm always here. So thank you.
Yay. Now, we also have something very exciting for everybody who's still here. One, thank you all for joining. But you may have heard that we have a book giveaway for you all. So thank you for joining us tonight. If you made it this far, you may be one of our lucky winners. I have been collecting the names throughout this evening, and we're going to have a fun, random selection, so no favorites will be played, of who's going to win this bundle of books, featuring Quiet Poems by Victoria, Soul Culture, Black Poets, Books, and Questions That Grew Me Up by Remika, and There Was a Party for Langston by Jason Reynolds. So Leslie, Peter, Roland, Cece, Elizabeth, and Adira, thank you all for joining us this evening. Let's see who wins. I'm so excited. Our first winner of the evening is Jazziyah. And don't worry, this moment, I will reach out to you and request everything that we'll need from you in order for us to share with you all. We're going to do one giveaway this evening, so Adira, you are our lucky winner. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And to the rest of our audience, I hope you enjoyed learning about spoken word poetry, learning about how to craft your own. I am a very big quotes person, so I do want to share a few things that I learned from Jazziyah tonight. One is that when you write, your writing should pass the so what test. When you read what you've written, does it make you feel anything? Why did you write it? If it doesn't make you, if it doesn't make you have any type of emotion, then maybe try again. How does an opening line impact the audience? Instead of thinking, look what I can do with words and make things sound pretty, say instead, look what I can do with the truth. What a beautiful reframing. And does each line support the next? All things to think about, and hopefully we'll revisit when Jazziyah comes back another time. So that will be all for the rest of this evening. If you do have a poem that you wrote or are inspired from tonight, please share it with us, tag us on Facebook at Sage Collective, or send them to advice@sagecollective.org. Thank you all again so much for being here with us. Check out Sage Advice Vibrant Learning on YouTube and visit our website at sagecollective.org to learn more about our Sage Advice Vibrant Learning program and to register for upcoming classes. It's been a wonderful evening. We hope to see you all again and have a wonderful night. Bye, everyone.